All right. Oh my gosh, I could talk. I'm so sorry. My bad. I forgot that I could talk on it.
Turn my video on. Yeah, what's up, dude?
Yeah, so it's just me now.
Alright. So what's going on?
Well, actually, let me. Well, we're streaming right now, but Arjun, he just wasn't feeling good, and then I know when we were going through grid, Yazur said he wasn't understanding it, so he was gonna go back and kind of like by himself and play with it a little more. So same thing happened with me. So I went back to apply the accessibility because that part we skipped yesterday and went straight to Flexbox.
Wait, so why did you guys skip that?
Because by the time we got done with the other one, it would have went well over like 9 o'clock. We only had, I think, an hour or so left, or maybe less than that when we moved on to the Flexbox. But so I'm just gonna do this probably up until I have to go to work. But so
try not to tell the rest of the guys not to skip anything either. They shouldn't be skipping.
Alright.
Skipping.
No, well, I don't know if anyone else has already gone through it, but I know me and Yazur and I, we hadn't done that yet. I don't know if everyone else has already.
More than likely they haven't been. I mean, they might have, but more than likely.
Yeah. So.
It's good. Try not to skip.
I won't.
For yourself.
Yeah.
For yourself.
So that's why I went back to this one.
Nice.
Actually.
Yeah, definitely move on to Flexbox and try to finish up the last the 3 CSS MDN sections, and then after you finish up the 3 of them, then move on to Flexbox. And actually, what I would do is I would just finish up the 4th one all the way up to Flexbox. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Alright, so I see you're on it right now, so yeah.
So which one should I go through? I should go through Free CodeCamp first, right? And then come to these?
You can do whichever one you want first.
Alright.
Wait, are you in MDN? Are you up to Flexbox yet?
That's what we did last night. We went up to Flexbox and then stopped.
On MDN?
Yes.
Okay. And then you guys did everything else as well, right?
We did, up to, except for this this portion, the one we skipped, we did.
No, I'm talking about.
Oh wait, you broke
I'm
up.
talking about.
What are you talking about? You keep breaking up.
I'm referring to Mozilla Developer Network.
Oh.
The CSS sections.
Yeah.
Have you done all those CSS sections besides everything, leading up to?
No, I did up to CSS layout, and we went up to Flexbox with.
That's what I'm saying. Did you do everything before that? No.
The guy,
You said
yeah,
no.
we didn't, because I jumped with them. I just went with the flow, so that
Okay,
we
yeah,
could.
don't go. You have to do what you didn't do. Don't do Flexbox yet. You're not ready for that.
Okay.
You have to go. So show me on MDN what you did not do yet. Okay, we have to do that.
I think it was somewhere here, and then I stopped.
This is why I also tell people to tell you guys to
Record.
Every section.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Have you been doing that? You're not ready for Flexbox.
Yeah. I mean, like.
Because I was wondering why you guys got the Flexbox so quick, because it literally took us like 30 days to get to Flexbox and Grid and finish those pre-code camp projects. I was like, wow, dude, you guys got there really quick. 2 weeks?
No, that's what I was like. No, I'm not. I was like, I'm just going.
I hear you. You gotta follow more people on GitHub too.
What do you mean? Don't laugh. This is on live. Everyone's gonna see you laughing at me. Hold on.
You gotta follow Quincy Larson. Follow Quincy.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, you can see what the big boy devs be doing.
Who do I need to follow? Oh, hey, look at that.
Don't follow anybody else. Follow your friends. Besides that, though.
Huh?
No, that's not important. I said follow your friends, but besides that, though, what we're working on now, what we have to do. I'm just kidding. You don't have to follow anybody. I was just.
No, now I'm gonna follow everybody, making me feel bad.
Yeah, no, I just saw myself and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot I even did. And then it just reminded me I did download, or I did fork the Electronic Frontier Foundation repositories. It's cool, dude. So yeah, show me what project you left off on the MDN CSS.
Okay.
So that means you guys are missing assessments as well.
Huh?
That means you guys are missing assessments as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely missing here.
Start where you left off at, Crystal. If you're the only one left, like, in the group right now, like, you're the furthest ahead. You know? So, I don't care if the last man standing is only on square 1. He's farther than the guy that got to square 100 and stopped.
Alright,
Don't start on Flexbox, though. Start literally where you left off at. Like, on that first tier, or the first section right there.
The introduction? I'm just gonna start all over.
Yeah, you're just gonna start over?
Yeah.
Alright, if you start over, I'll probably start over with you. I haven't done CSS yet either.
Okay. So then I will stop this. Alright. Is this where I start? Hold on. Is this it? Introduction?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh no, I was just trying to see where I'm at.
Let me interrupt you.
Actually, okay, so this. Oh, what the heck? Wait.
Oh.
Where is... Okay, hold on.
No. I got some hot dogs in the oven that smell so good.
Oh my gosh, I'm hungry now. I'm just eating candy. I need to stop. Alright. Okay, guys. This module contains the following articles, which will take you through all the basic theory of CSS and provide ample opportunity for you to test out some skills. How CSS works. Question before I start this. Okay, the homework. Is the homework under Discord? Is that all like after we do these?
So you know the tier 1 homework is only your homework, right? The tier 2 homework is for JavaScript. So you know there's some paragraphs that I wrote, like some of the steps or whatever it is, like the homework numbers, you know, they'll be duplicates. There'll be 3 tier 1 and 3 tier 2. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, tier 1 here.
Alright, so yeah, all the tier 1 projects are basically, you can do it, just do it. But since you guys haven't necessarily gotten a grid yet, there should be nobody that's actually doing the grid, Flexbox, and responsive design one. But you guys should have done everything up until that point.
Got it. Okay.
So hopefully no. So there's 2 homeworks that you guys shouldn't be able to do yet. You shouldn't be able. Well, no, there's 1. You shouldn't be able to do the contact form yet with Flexbox. Grid. That's the only one that I can think of. Besides that, everything else you guys, I mean, well, since you're just starting CSS, you shouldn't be able to do any of the CSS homework either.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So, how CSS works. In this module, we start off with a theoretical grounding, looking at what CSS is, how the browser turns HTML into a DOM, how CSS is applied to parts of the DOM, some very basic syntax examples, and what code is used to actually include our CSS in our web page. CSS syntax. Sorry, hold on 1 minute. I was taking notes for them. CSS syntax. Next up, we dive into CSS syntax in a lot more detail, looking at how properties and their values form into declarations. Multiple declarations form into declaration blocks, and declaration blocks and selectors form into CSS rules. We round off the article by looking at other CSS syntax features such as comments and whitespace. Selectors. Selectors are mentioned in the previous article, but in this guide we go into a lot more detail showing what selector types are what selector types are available and how they work. CSS values and units. There are many types of CSS property values to consider, from numerical values to colors to functions that perform a certain action like embedding a background image or rotating an element. Some of these rely on particular units for specifying the exact values they are representing. Do you want your box to be 30 pixels wide, or 30 centimeters, or 30 ems? In this guide, we look at more common values like length, color, and simple functions, as well as exploring less common units like degrees and even unitless numerical values. Cascade and inheritance. CSS has two different but related systems to resolve situations where you have selector conflicts. Different selectors select the same elements, which one wins and ends up being applied, and elements nested inside other elements. Some of the styling applied to the parent elements makes sense to be inherited by the child elements, some doesn't. This article covers both systems enough detail to be useful but not overwhelming. The box model. The CSS box model is the foundation of layout on the web, which element is represented as a rectangular box with the box's content, padding, border, and margin built up around one another like the layers of an onion. As the browser renders a web page, it works out what styles are applied to the context of each box, how big the surrounding onion layers are, and where the boxes sit in relation to one another. Before understanding how to create CSS layouts, you need to understand the box model. Debugging CSS. In the final article of this module, we take a look at the basics of debugging CSS, including exploring the CSS applied to a page and other tools that can help you find errors in your CSS code. Okay. Assessments. The following assessment will test your understanding of the CSS basics covered in the guides above. Fundamental CSS comprehension. This assessment tests your understanding of the above guides with some carefully crafted exercises. Okay.
On to the next article.
Huh?
Oh, the first article. On to the first article, which is how CSS works. Oh no, it's introduction to.
Okay. Oh, how shoot.
That's what it is.
Okay. What is CSS? As we have mentioned before, CSS is a language for specifying how documents are presented to users, how they are styled, laid out, etc. A document is usually a text file structured using a markup language. HTML is the most common markup language, but you will also come across other markup languages such as SVG or XML. Presenting a document to a user means converting it into a usable form for your audience. Browsers like Firefox, Chrome, Internet Explorer are designed to present documents visually, for example, on a computer screen, project, or printer. How does CSS affect HTML? Web browsers apply CSS rules to a document to affect how they are displayed. A CSS rule is formed from a set of properties which have values set to update how the HTML content is displayed. For example, I want my element's width to be 50% of its parent element and its background to be red. A selector which selects the elements you want to apply the updated property values to. For example, I want to apply my CSS rule to all the paragraphs in my HTML document. And then a set of CSS rules contained within a style sheet determines how a web page should look. You will learn a lot more about what CSS syntax looks like in the next article of the module, CSS syntax. Okay, quick CSS example. The above descriptions may or may not have made sense, so let's make sure things are clear by presenting a quick example. First of all,
Don't look back.
huh?
Don't be don't be afraid to look back. Like, I'm gonna end up re-recording all this anyway. Like, don't be afraid to like look back. I know what it feels like sometimes when like you feel like you're reading out loud and you don't fully grasp something. So don't be afraid to stop, look back, and reread. Like, you're under no obligation, so you can completely do that, dude. Take your time. It's all you.
Okay. Alright,
Your goal right now is just to understand it.
yeah. Main goal.
Yeah.
So your food's done?
No, she actually left the toaster on me on.
Oh.
Done too. You know it's done when you can smell it.
So let's make sure things are clear by presenting a quick example. First of all, let's take a simple HTML document containing an H1 and a paragraph. Notice that a style sheet is applied to the HTML using a link element. Now let's look at a very simple CSS example containing two rules, H1 and paragraph. Alright, the first rule starts with an H1 selector. Which means that it will apply its property values to the H1 element. It contains 3 property values. Each property value pair is called a declaration. The first one sets the color to blue, or text color to blue. The second set sets the background color to yellow. The third declaration puts a border around the header that is 1 pixel wide, solid, not dotted or dashed, etc., and colored black. The second rule starts with the P selector, which means that it will apply its property values to the paragraph element. It contains one declaration, which sets the text color to red. In a web browser, the code above will produce the following output. Wait, did I do this already? Let me see which one this is. Oh, no, you know what? No. Duh. I did go through it because I went, but I didn't upload anything. I'm going back. Just kidding. I just knew it looked familiar. Sorry. Okay. This isn't too pretty, but at least it starts to give you an idea of how CSS works. Active learning, writing your first CSS. Now we'll give you a chance to write your own bit of CSS. You can do this using the input areas below in the live editable example. In a similar fashion to what you saw above, you've got some simple HTML elements and some CSS properties. Try adding some simple declarations to your CSS to style the HTML. If you make a mistake, you can always reset it using the reset button. If you get really stuck, press the show solution button to see a potential answer. Okay. Similar fashion. This one is saying we could do our own, right?
Output, yeah. You can.
We'll shuffle it back here. It's pretty similar. So, you see how we put the black here? Or they put the black? The colors?
Yeah.
On mine... Wait,
Alright, so I don't know. I was just cleaning up my a little bit, so talk to me.
Oh,
Like, I know how to do this, but
no, just because when I did my border, it took my text color, and when I put the actual, like, let's say I put the border as purple, it didn't take it, but when I removed the color purple, it went purple. I only needed solid in there. Why does it do
so
that?
you changed black to purple.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and put the solution? Oh, you just reset it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the solution, but I did.
Oh wait, no. I'm saying show the solution. I meant like, so if you change that, does it change it in the output?
Let me show you right here. And then I went. And then I went border. So see, okay, so I put solid and it goes purple, but when I do that, it does. Oh, never mind. I don't know why it looked like it turned black the last time. Was it because I had it smaller and it looked black?
I don't know. I thought I actually saw the text, the word black there, where purple was.
Okay. All right.
So.
Okay. How does CSS actually work? When a browser displays a document, it must combine the document's content with its style information. It processes the document in 2 stages. The browser converts HTML and CSS into the DOM, document object model. The DOM represents the document in the computer's memory. It combines the document's content with its style. The browser displays the contents of the DOM. So the DOM, it loads HTML, parse HTML, creates DOM tree. The parse loads the CSS, and then parse CSS, attach style to DOM nodes, and then there's your display. Okay. About the DOM. A DOM has a tree-like structure. Each element, attribute, and piece of text in the markup language becomes a DOM node in the tree structure. The nodes are defined by their relationship to other DOM nodes. Some elements are parents of child nodes, and child nodes have siblings. Understanding the DOM helps you design, debug, and maintain your CSS because the DOM is where your CSS and the document's content meet up. DOM representation. Rather than a long, boring explanation, let's take an example to see how the DOM and CSS work together. Let's assume the following HTML code. Okay. In the DOM, the node corresponding to our key element is a parent. Yeah. Its children are text node, and the nodes corresponding to our span elements. The span nodes are also parents with text nodes as their children. P, let's use span. This is how our browser interprets the previous HTML snippet. It renders the above DOM tree and then outputs it in the browser like so. Let's use cascading style sheets. Applying CSS to the DOM. Actually, hold on one moment. Okay, let's say we add, or applying CSS to the DOM, let's say we added some CSS to our document to style it. Again, the HTML is as follows. If we apply the following CSS to it, span, border, and background, the browser will parse the HTML and create a DOM from it, then parse the CSS. Since the only rule available in the CSS has the span selector, it will apply that rule to each one of the 3 spans. The updated output is as follows. How to apply your CSS to your HTML. There are different ways to apply CSS to an HTML document that you'll commonly come across. Some more useful than others. Since here we will briefly review each one. External style sheet. You've already seen external style sheets in this article, but not by that name. An external style sheet is when you have your CSS written in a separate file with the CSS extension and you reference it from an HTML link element. The HTML file looks something like this. And the CSS file. This method is arguably the best, as you can use one style sheet to style multiple documents and would only need to update the CSS in one place if changes were needed. Internal style sheet. An internal style sheet is where you don't have an external CSS file, but instead place your CSS inside a style element. Element contained inside the HTML head. So the HTML would look like this. Okay. This can be useful in some circumstances. Maybe you're working with a content management system where you can't modify the CSS files directly, but it isn't quite as efficient as external style sheets. In a website, the CSS would need to be repeated across every page and updated in multiple places if changes were required. Inline styles. Okay. Inline styles are CSS declarations that affect one element only, contained within a style attribute. Please don't do this. Unless you really have to. It is really bad for maintenance. You might have to update the same information multiple times per document, and it also mixes your presentation CSS information with your HTML structural information, making the CSS harder to read and understand. Keeping your different types of code separated and pure makes for a much easier job for all who work on the code. The only time you might have to resort to using inline styles is when your working environment is really restrictive. Perhaps your CMS only allows you to edit the HTML body. What's next? At this point, you should understand the basics of how CSS works and how browsers deal with it. Next, we'll move on to learn about CSS syntax. A touch of vocabulary. At its most basic, at its most basic level, CSS consists of two building blocks: properties and values. Properties, human readable identifiers that indicate which stylistic features, font width, background color you want to change. Each specified property is given a value which indicates how you want to change those stylistic features, what you want to change the font width and background color to. A property paired with a value is called a CSS declaration. A CSS declaration are put within CSS declaration blocks. And finally, CSS declaration blocks are paired with selectors to produce CSS rule sets or CSS rules. Before getting too deep in theory and written explanation, let's look at a concrete example. We saw something very similar in our previous article. And the CSS file. Combining these two gives us the following result. Let's look at the syntax in more detail. CSS declarations. Setting CSS properties to specific values is the core function of the CSS language. The CSS engine calculates how or which declarations apply to every single element of a page in order to appropriately lay it out and style it. What is important to remember is that both parties and values are case sensitive in CSS. The property and value in each pair is separated by a colon. So CSS declaration has the property, the value, and the colon separates the two entities. There are more than 300 different properties in CSS and nearly an infinite number of different values. Not all pairs of properties and values are allowed. Each property has a specific list of valid values defined for it. Important. If a property is unknown or if a value is not valid for a given property, the declaration is deemed invalid and is wholly ignored by the browser's CSS engine. Important. In CSS and other web standards, US spelling has been agreed on as the standard to stick to where the uncertainty arises. For example, color should always be spelled color. Color with a U won't work. Active learning, spot the declarations. In the example above, there are 5 separate CSS declarations. Can you identify the invalid, incorrect, or wrong declaration and work out why it's invalid? Where's the example above? There's one. I should say there's 5. Oh, there's 5 separate declarations, but there is one. Okay. CSS declaration blocks. Declarations are grouped in blocks with each set of declarations being wrapped by an open opening curly brace, and closing one. Each declaration contained inside a declaration block has to be separated by a semicolon. Otherwise, the code won't work or will at least give unexpected results. The last declaration of a block doesn't need to be terminated by a semicolon, though it is often considered good style to do so as it prevents forgetting to add it when extending the block with another declaration. A CSS declaration block, okay. Okay, the final semicolon is not necessary, but good practice. Note, blocks can sometimes be nested. In such cases, opening and closing braces must be nested logically, in the same fashion as the tags of nested HTML elements. The most common example you'll come across are @ rules, which are blocks beginning with an @ identifier like media, @ font face, etc. See CSS statements below. Note a declaration block may be empty. This is perfectly valid. Active learning. Where are the declaration blocks? In the above example, have you been able to identify the 3 separate CSS declaration blocks? CSS selectors and rules. We are missing one part of the puzzle. We need to discuss how to tell our declaration box which elements they should be applied to. This is done by prefixing each declaration block with a selector. Alright, which is what is in this blue box. A pattern that matches some elements on the page. The associated declarations will be applied to those elements only. The selector plus the declaration block is called a rule set, or often simply just a rule. Selectors can get very complicated. You can make a rule match multiple elements by including multiple selectors separated by commas. A group and selectors can be chained together. For example, I want to select any element with the class of blah, but only if it's inside an article element and only while it is being hovered by the mouse pointer. Don't worry, things will become clearer as you become more experienced with CSS, and we'll explain selectors in great detail in the next article, selectors. An element may be matched by several selectors. Therefore, several rules may set a given property multiple times. CSS defines which one has precedence over the others and must be applied. This is called the cascade algorithm. And you'll learn more about it, or learn more about how it works in cascade and inheritance. Important, if a single basic selector in a chain or group is invalid, like when using an unknown pseudo element or pseudo class, the group selectors is still valid, except for the invalid selector, which will be ignored. If a single basic selector in a chain or group is invalid, like when using an unknown pseudo element or pseudo class, the group of selectors is still valid except for the invalid selector, which will be ignored. Okay, active learning, spot the group of selectors. In our example, have you been able to identify the rule that will apply to 2 different types of elements? CSS statements. So the different groups is div, p, id, here are the rules. We don't have that. Should I go down that far? Yeah, okay. CSS statements. CSS rules are the main building blocks of a style sheet, the most common block you'll see in CSS. But there are other types of block that you'll come across occasionally. CSS rules are one type of so-called CSS statements. The other types are as follows. At rules are used in CSS to convey metadata, conditional information, or other descriptive information. They start with an @ sign, followed by an identifier to say what kind of rule it is, then a syntax block of some kind ending with a semicolon. Each type of @ rule defined by the identifier will have its own internal syntax and semantics. Examples include char set and import, metadata, media or document, conditional information, also called nested statements, see below, font face, descriptive information. Special syntax example, import custom CSS. This @ rule imports another CSS file into the current CSS. Nested statements are a specific subset of @ rule, the syntax of which is a nested block of CSS rules that will only be applied to the document if a specific condition is matched. The media @ rule content is applied only if the device which runs the browser matches the express condition. Okay, the @supports @ rule, or the supports @ rule content is applied only if the browser actually supports the tested feature. The document @ rule content is applied only if the current page matches some conditions. Specific syntax example. Media, minimum width 801 for the body, margin auto width 800. The above nested statement only applies the nested rule when the page's width exceeds 800 pixels. You'll learn more about some types of @ rules, nested statements at appropriate places in the course. Important, any statement which is in a rule set, an @ rule or a nested statement is invalid and therefore ignored. Beyond syntax, make CSS readable. As you can see, CSS syntax is not that hard to write. You write some rules, and if you write them wrong, they will just be ignored. However, even if that works, there are some best practices worth knowing to make your CSS code easier to use and maintain. Whitespace. Whitespace means actual spaces, tabs, and new lines. You can add whitespace to make your style sheets more readable. In the same manner as HTML, the browser tends to ignore much of the whitespace inside your CSS. A lot of the white space is just there to aid readability. In our first example below, we have each declaration, font padding, margin, max width, and rule start end on its own line. This is arguably a good way to write CSS, as it makes it easy to maintain and understand. Okay, rule. Okay, you could write exactly the same CSS like so with most of the white space removed. This is functionally identical to the first example. I'm sure you'll agree that it is somewhat harder to read. The code layout you choose is usually a personal preference, although when you start to work in teams, you may find that the existing team has its own style guide that specifies an agreed convention to follow. The white space you need to be careful of in CSS is a white space around the properties and their values. For example, the following is valid CSS. But the following is invalid. Okay. Spaces make a difference. Okay. Excuse me. Because 0 auto is not recognized as a valid value for the margin property, 0 and auto are two separate values. And the browser does not recognize padding as a valid property. So you should always make sure to separate distinct values from one another by at least a space, but keep property names values together as one unbroken string. Comments. As with HTML, you are encouraged to make comments in your CSS to help you understand how your code works when coming back to it after several months, and to help others understand it. Comments are also useful for temporarily commenting out certain parts of the code for testing purposes. For example, if you're trying to find which part of your code is causing an error, comment in CSS begin with / asterisk and end with asterisk /. Shorthand. Some properties like font, background, padding, border, margin are called shorthand properties. This is because they allow you to set several property values in a single line, saving time and making your code neater in the process. For example, this line, so in shorthand, like padding and margin, the values are applied in the order top, right, bottom, left. The same order as an analog clock. There are also other shorthand types, for example, two values, which set, for example, the padding from top to bottom and left to right. Does the same thing as all these. Whereas the line background, red, URL, repeat X fix, do the same thing as we won't attempt to teach these exhaustively. You'll come across many examples later on in the course, and you are advised to look up the shorthand property names in our CSS reference to find out more. What was that? CSS shorthand. What's next? At this point, you should now understand the fundamentals of CSS syntax necessary to write a working style sheet that's easy to maintain over time. In the next article, we will dig deep into CSS selectors, looking at different ones available and how they work.
All right. How many is that? How many is that? Oh, look at that.
Where are we?
I know.
Oh.
Yes, selectors. We're at selectors.
So like, oh, maybe right here? Almost halfway through. Well, I got a little bit more time before I have to go in. But let me do this. Alright, the basics. In the last article, we explained general CSS syntax and terminology in detail. To recap, selectors are one part of a CSS rule and come just before CSS declaration blocks. Different type of selectors. Selectors can be divided into the following categories. Simple selectors match one or more elements based on element type, class, or ID. Attribute selectors match one or more elements based on their attributes, attribute values. Pseudo classes match one or more elements that exist in a certain state, such as an element that is being hovered over by the mouse pointer, or a checkbox that is currently disabled or checked, or an element that is the first child of its parent in the DOM tree. Pseudo elements match one or more parts of the content that are in a certain position in relation to an element. For example, the first word of each paragraph or generated content appearing just before an element. Combinators. These are not exactly selectors themselves, but ways of combining two or more selectors in useful ways for very specific selections. For example, you could select only paragraphs that are direct descendants of divs, or paragraphs that come directly after headings. Multiple selectors. Again, these are not separate selectors. The idea is that you can put multiple selectors on the same CSS rule, separated by commas, to apply a single set of declarations to all elements selected by those selectors. Selectors article overview. The next 4 articles all explore different aspects of selectors. We've broken this information up because there is a lot of it, and we wanted to make it less intimidating and give you some clear points to take breaks mid-learning. The articles are as follows: simple selectors, attribute selectors, pseudo classes, pseudo elements, and combinators and multiple selectors. You are strongly advised to tackle simple selectors first in case you miss any pertinent information. Type selectors, aka element selectors. This selector is just a case-insensitive match between the selector name and given HTML element name. This is the simplest way to target all elements of a given type. Let's take a look at an example. Here's some HTML, a simple style sheet, and we get this. P elements are red, so what color? I prefer black. This is a paragraph. I prefer black. This is a paragraph. Okay. Jump. Active learning, selecting different elements. For this active learning, we'd like you to try changing the selector on the single CSS rule so that different elements in the example are styled. Do you know how to write a selector to apply the rule set to multiple elements at once? If you make a mistake, you can always reset it using the reset button. If you get really stuck, press the show solution. Alright, try changing the selector on the single CSS rule so that different elements in the example it. Okay, let's do all of them. P, L, I. Alright, so that's what they show. Alright, class selectors. The class selector consists of a dot, followed by a class name. The class name is any value without spaces placed within an HTML class attribute. It is up to you to choose a name for the class. It is also noteworthy that multiple elements in a document can have the same class value, and a single element can have multiple class names separated by whitespace. Here's a quick example. First, done. Oh, okay, so we'll do both of these. And we get this result. So because done is included in first and second listed item, they'll both get the line through. And then the first class will be bolded. Okay. Active learning, handling multiple classes. For this activity learning, we'd like you to try changing this class attribute on the paragraph elements so you can apply multiple separate effects. Try applying a base box class plus a role class, editor note, or warning. And optionally important if you want to give the box strong importance. Think about how this kind of rule set allows you to build up a modular system of styles. If you make a mistake, you can always reset it using the reset button. If you get really stuck, press the show solution button to see a potential answer. For this, class attributes on the paragraph elements, so you can apply multiple separate effects. Try applying base box class plus the role class. What you got? Oh, first one? Same thing. Oh, I see. He done did all of them. Okay, let me do. I'm trying to what's this? ID selectors. The ID selector consists of a hash pound symbol followed by the ID name of a given element. Any element can have a unique ID name set with the ID attribute. It is up to you to choose an ID name. It's the most efficient way to select a single element. Important. An ID name must be unique in the document. Behaviors regarding duplicated IDs are unpredictable. For example, in some browsers, only the first instance is counted and the rest are ignored. Look at the quick example. Here is some HTML. PID polite, PID rude, a simple style sheet, plot and rude. And we get this as an output. Okay. Yes. Active learning, assigning the winner's colors with IDs. For this active learning, we'd like you to give the first, second, and third place in the competition an appropriate gold, silver, and bronze color. You will do this by giving CSS rules 2 through 4, appropriate selectors, which select the relevant elements based on their ID. If you make a mistake, you can always, okay. So, silver is second, so goldenrod. What's this? No, bronze. Alright, it's all good. Universal selector. The universal selector asterisk is the ultimate joker. It allows selecting all elements on a page, as it is rarely used to apply style to every element on a page. It is often used in a combination with other selectors. Important. Take care when using the universal selector, as it applies to all elements. Using it in large web pages can have a perceptible impact on performance. Web pages display slower than expected. There are not many instances where you use this selector. Now, for an example, first some HTML. A simple style sheet. Together, these give the following result. This is in paragraph is 1. Is 2, 3, and another 4. Okay. In the next article, well done for reaching the end of our first selectors tutorial. We hope you find your first play with selectors fun. We've now looked at a simple core selectors we'll commonly use. Let's level up to more advanced features, starting with attribute selectors. Attribute selectors are a special kind of selector that will match elements based on their attributes and attribute values. Their generic syntax consists of square brackets containing an attribute name followed by an optional condition to match against the value of the attribute. Attribute selectors can be divided into two categories depending on the way they match attribute values. Presence in value attributes are selectors, and substring value attribute selectors. Presence in value attribute selectors. These attribute selectors try to match an exact attribute value. Attribute. This selector will select all elements with the attribute ATTR, whatever its value. Attribute equals value. This selector will select all elements with the attribute ATTR, but only if its value is val. Attribute tilde equals val. This selector will select all elements within the attribute ATTR, but only if val is one of a space-separated list of words contained in attribute's value. Let's look at an example featuring the following HTML snippet. Okay. All elements with the attribute data vegetable are given green text. So here, all elements with attribute data vegetable with the exact value liquid are given a golden background color. So data vegetable liquid. So these two. And then all elements with the attribute data vegetable containing the value spicy, even among others, are given a red text color. So just be red pepper. Cur. Let Boscales. Alright, the data dash asterisk attributes seen in this example are called data attributes. They provide a way to store custom data in an HTML attribute so it can then be easily extracted and used. See how to use data attributes for more information. Substring value attribute selectors. Attribute selectors in this class are also known as regex-like selectors because they offer flexible matching in a similar fashion to regular expression. But to be clear, these selectors are not true regular expression. Okay, this selector will select all elements with attribute for which the attribute starts with val. This selector will select all elements with the attribute for which the val ends with val. This selector will select all elements with the attribute for which the value contains the substring val. Substring is simply part of a string. For example, cat is a substring in the string caterpillar. Note, there's also a very specific alternative version of the first option. Attribute value. This selector selects all elements with the attribute for which the value is exactly val or starts with val. The dash here isn't a mistake. This was implemented specifically to match language codes, language EN or language EN US, and you probably won't use it very often. Let's continue our previous example and add the following CSS rules. Hold on. Okay. With those new rules, you will get this. Data quantity. Active learning, styling soccer results. In this active learning, we'd like you to try your hand at adding attribute selectors to some rules to style a simple soccer results listing. There are 3 things to try to do here. The first 3 rules add a UK, German, and Spanish flag icon respectively to the left hand side of the list items. You need to fill in appropriate attribute selectors so that the teams are given their correct country flags, matched by language. Rules 4 through 6 add a back. Okay, hold on. Okay, rules 4 through 6. Add a background color to the list items to indicate whether the team has gone up in the league, green, down. Okay, hold on. Up, down, or stayed in the same place. Fill the appropriate attribute selectors to match the correct colors to the correct teams, matched by ink, same, and DEC strings that appear in the data per attribute values. Rules 7 through, okay, let's just. Okay, so oh, decrease, increase, same, increase, decrease. Okay.
Okay.
So um.
What happened?
I'm just kind of trying to figure out. Okay, the first three rules add a UK, German, and Spanish flag icon to respectively to the left-hand side of the list items. You need to fill in appropriate attribute selectors so that teams are given their correct country flags matched by language. Alright, so I need to do language first and the flags. So with that, I'm confused. The first three rules add a UK, German, and Spanish flag icon respectively to the left-hand side of the. You will need to fill in appropriate attribute selectors so that the teams are given their correct country flags matched by language. How would I do that? Hold on. Maybe I need to make this bigger. So in this state, or in this first part, do I have to do each one? Or make one for each?
Pardon?
I'm just confused.
Yeah, do your stuff. Do your free stuff there.
Huh?
Let's see. In this learning, in this active learning, we'd like you to try your hand at adding attribute selectors to some rules to style a simple soccer results listing. There are three things to try to do here. The first three rules add a UK, German, and Spanish flag icon, respectively, to the left-hand side of list items. You need to fill in appropriate attribute selectors so that teams are given their correct country flags matched by language. So I'm assuming above, I didn't follow along. I'm assuming above that they showed you how to add flag icons.
Did they?
Scroll up a little bit. And a little bit more. Right there. Now scroll.
Where?
Scroll down to the next code block. Keep going. To the next code block. Right there. Let's see. Classic usage for language selection. Then we have lang France. Then it says all elements within the attributes data quantity for which the value starts with optional. So it says opacity, data quantity is optional. All elements with attribute each kg, scroll down a little bit. And then each elements with attribute data vegetable containing the substring that's spicy. Turn it back to green. Green. Scroll down. Okay, so that's what we get right there. It says, so you haven't learned anything about adding flags. Alright, so scroll down. Let's finish reading.
You mean adding an icon?
Yeah, has it shown you how to add an icon? Oh, scroll down. Oh, I think it gives you the code right there. So let's see. We have an ordered list of languages, English. Can't really see the rest of that English stuff. So we have English, Spanish, Dutch, Spanish, Dutch, English. Alright. We have Barcelona. And then our CSS. This is for our LI. We have a URL, HTTP, GitHub link, CSS instruction. For the output, scroll down a little bit. And show the solution. We can see what they want us to do. It says something about flags. Alright. Okay, so there are flags. Reset.
Oh,
Oh, it's not show the solution again.
Show it again?
Yeah, show it again. Alright, reset it again.
Oh, GB, okay. GB Great Britain.
Show it again. Alright, hide it again. Or reset it again. Okay. And then do it one more time for me. Show and then reset after like 5 seconds. Just want to get the gist.
Okay. I think I get it. I didn't put the CSS in here. So we got... Great Britain. And then it said DE, which is, okay, which one's DE? Bayern Munich. Language equals DE. Okay, ES is Real Madrid. So equals this. Background color. What color is this? Oh, okay, hold on. And then they want green RGBA. So everyone that's gone up in the league. So that would be same. So everyone that got increase INC. Background color 0.7 is increase. Very specific. Okay. Kingston. Let me call you back. Let me call you back. Okay. Alright. Okay, part 2. Rules 4 through 6. Add a background color to the list items to indicate whether the team has gone up in the league, green, down, red, or stayed in the same place, blue. Fill in the appropriate attribute selectors to match the correct colors to the correct teams by the increase, same, or decrease strings that appear in the data perf attribute values. So RGB A02550.7 is green, which is increase. missing something. This selector will select all elements with the attribute ATR for which the value starts with value. This selector selects all elements with the attribute for which the value ends. Start and 00255.5, that's blue. So that is saying two 5500. Blue down 005. Wait, oh wait, what? 255 000. Huh?
0.5.
Right.
Barcelona. What are you making up?
Barcelona, but Barcelona is.
No, I was just reading.
Oh, because the numbers, the colors aren't the same. So green right here, 02250 0.7. 0025.
126.
So blue is the same, and then 255000.7. Okay, that's green again.
Oh, so
should it be a 5?
It says green is RGBA 0-2.255.
Yeah.
0-0.053. Separated by a comma, not a dash.
It's this third one. I think it's supposed to be 0.5 instead of
0.5.
Yeah, I think it's
0.5.
Okay, so then this one will be data per asterisk equals decrease. Okay, rules 7 through 8 make teams that are set to be promoted bold, and teams that are in danger of being relegated italic and gray. Fill in the appropriate attribute selectors to match these styles to the correct teams, matched by the pro and rel strings that appear in the data per. Okay, so bold, in danger. Wait, make teams that are set to be promoted. Okay, in bold. Promoted. Oh. Italic, I'm sure it's gray. Alright, I have to go after this. I'm gonna start my shift. Oh wait. Whoops.
Sorry.
But I'm gonna finish this. Equals. Teams that are in danger of being relegated. So REL. If you make a mistake, you can always reset. Okay. Strings that appear. Oh my gosh. Let me see. Okay, so this whole section. Show. Okay. GB DE ES E same. Yeah, see. See, why does it say it's 7? Does it need to be 7? Let's see what it looks like. 7. Why is it saying something totally different? Pro. Row. Okay. Okay. Manchester was more bold, regular, blue. Grayed out. Oh, I got Citadel. Alright, so show solution. Oh, wow, that was confusing. Okay, but I get it. That's cool. Okay. See the attribute selectors reference page for more useful examples. Alrighty then. I think that is it until attribute selectors. I will pick up when I can, hopefully in the morning, starting from pseudo to finish this off and do the assessment CSS. But alright, I am out of here and I will chat with you later.